Hello everybody, this is John McCririck and I want to welcome you to the politics special on the Ask Big Mac show. Something totally different here. I'm going to be ranting about politics. So we've got the booby here. She'll be able to give me the question that I want to answer for you. And also make sure you subscribe to my YouTube channel. Subscribe to that. So you get all the information from the Big Mac show, lots of other stuff that we give you. Booby, what is the big political question of the day?
Well, I'm not quite sure whether you want to answer this. Yeah. This is from Leslie Bloomfield from Facebook, and she asks, John, you have been elected to Prime Minister.
Oh, yes. Oh, Leslie, what an intelligent woman you are, Leslie. Prime Minister, yes. I can see outside Downing Street. I'd shuffle you in the back door, booby. I wouldn't let you be seen when I go in. Go on.
What 3 laws would you introduce, and which 3 laws would you remove from the statute book?
Very, very sensible question. And if only you were sort of king for the day, prime minister for the day, and you could enforce all these. That's the problem, of course, enforcing what you would like to do. I think in the last Parliament, the bravest act that David Cameron, the Tory Prime Minister, did was to legalise gay marriage. I think absolutely fantastic. It was right. Who matters? Who cares? Who falls in love with who, as long as it's over age and it's consensual. Anything else just shouldn't matter. Who has sex with who, what they do, how they run their lives. And we had Conservatives really opposing gay marriage, unbelievable, who believe in freedom, who believe in getting the state out of our lives, like to dictate the sex lives of our citizens. So thankfully David Cameron, and it cost him tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of votes. We would have got, the Tories would have got at least, and we, because I'm a Tory, I believe in the Tory sort of philosophy, Tories would have got a much bigger majority than 12 had they been able to, had they not gone through with the Gay Marriage Act. So well done to them. Ireland did it as well, and America's done it. How ridiculous would they? Of the industrialised Western countries, virtually the only one that doesn't allow gay marriage. So that's been done. Terrific decision by David Cameron, brave decision, going against his own party and his sort of stalwarts, and it definitely cost him votes. So what would I do now? My first act would be legalise drugs. All drugs should be legalised. Now that's from heroin and ghastly things like that, crack, whatever they are, legalise them. What do you do then? First of all, you do away with the criminality that the drug industry round the world has brought. Millions and millions of pounds and dollars and all that sort of thing is spent on the police forces and cracking down on drugs and drug hauls and all the way the criminals get to the kids and everything like that. If you legalise drugs, that you get drugs just as you can, alcohol, for instance, over 18, so nobody can get drugs under 18 officially, legally. So treat drugs like alcohol, and the benefits are huge. And as for the downside, of course there's a downside, making it easier to get, but you could spend money on education, on rehabilitation, on teaching people. So just to make sure that nothing is furtive. You don't bring crime into it, which is huge. Billions of pounds are wasted on cracking down on drug dealers. And it isn't, if you were winning, if the drug war was being won, I'd say, right, fine, we're doing away with drugs, people can't get hold of them because of the enforcement of the law. It's failing. Everywhere around the world it's failing. So legalise drugs. That would be the greatest thing David Cameron could do as far as domestic policy was concerned, legalising drugs just as he did legalising gay marriage. So there's a way ahead for the Conservatives now. They've got the freedom of Parliament. I know they've got only a majority of 12, but they have a huge opportunity here. And the trouble is their own backbenchers. And you've got the grotesque position of Conservatives saying you can't do this, you can't have that, for your own good and that kind of thing, failing to understand the harm it's doing to swathes of our society. The drug impositions that we bring in are in fact fueling the use of drugs. And the youngsters especially like to sort of use it and say, well, it's a way of defying society and all that sort of thing. If you could buy it openly, and then you help to rehabilitate and you help to discriminate for people not to take drugs, that would be fine. So drug legislation I certainly do. The second one I would go along with, I wouldn't scrap Trident, but Trident, £100 billion, it's ridiculous. You tell me any situation where any Prime Minister could ever press the button on Trident. Russia's not going to attack us. They're not going to actually attack us and nobody else. You've got the North Koreans. Are they going to attack us? Could we threaten them? What is the point? And once you fire the nuclear weapon, well, the world could come to an end anyway. Would life be worth living? So it is absolutely pointless having Trident. But you could argue it's got a deterrent effect. Whether it has or not, especially Britain having it, I don't know. But the deterrent effect we still keep. But what we do is keep our present Tridents. So keep the submarines, 4 submarines wandering around the place. Nobody knows if they wouldn't be able to fire. The deterrent effect would be there. So you would update them and that kind of thing. But that is the only way. So you get the best of both worlds. You would keep the deterrent, you'd still have it. Nobody would know if it was unable to fire, because they can still fire after sort of, they're modernised up to a point and that kind of thing. Keep the deterrent like that, so you've got the deterrent effect. But what you don't do, you don't spend £100 million on recommissioning and getting more Trident, getting more the equivalent of Trident again. So that is a policy that should be enforced, because the Conservatives, they also about defending the country. We are defending the country, but no one, and I've spoken to Tory MPs, no one can give me a scenario where we would actually use Trident. No good against Islamic State and fanatics like that. Against rogue states is absolutely pointless. Who is actually going to nuke us or threaten to nuke us and nobody else? So then we're on the umbrella of NATO and the Americans. So we've got a situation where we want to spend £100 million on something that could never be used, and if it was used, we're probably all dead anyway. So that will be a number 2 on my list. So we've got legalising drugs, we've got keeping Trident but not updating it, not recommissioning it, and the third thing, what I would do, I bring in, which is the most important thing I think of all as far as all of us are concerned. At the moment, the Her Majesty's Inland Revenue have a tax book, a tax rule book, 17,000 pages. Can you imagine that? The rules and the details and the quirks of it and the anomalies and all that kind of thing and the paperwork and all that. I would bring that down to 1 page. And how I do it to 1 page is quite simple. A flat rate tax. Everyone pays tax at 20%, earning over £20,000. So everybody under £20,000, no tax. At the moment it's going up to about 12,000, isn't it? They're moving it up in little stages. So the great thing is helping the poorest in society, absolutely right. Why scrimp and get a few bob out of them? So under £20,000 you pay no tax. Over £20,000 you pay 20%, everybody pays 20%. And the great thing about that is everybody will pay it. Nobody's going to sort of risk going to jail and all the penalties that can happen if you don't pay your tax. So you pay your taxes at 20%. The richest pay 20%, the poorest pay 20%. The people nearer to 20,000 and over, they pay 20%. The downside of that is, of course, no allowances. You can't go and claim for clothing, can't go and claim for trips. All the ways you get out of paying tax, all go. In my 1-page Inland Revenue rule book, all it says is no allowances made for anything. So it does away with all these accountants, all these fiddling around they're going and trying to evade and avoid tax and whatever the scams and everything. All that's gone. You just pay your 20%, which people wouldn't argue with, over £20,000. Do away with all the work that you'll be saved. Small companies, they would save hundreds of thousands, millions of pounds, billions of pounds. They'd save all in between them, all the companies, if they didn't have any tax work to do. So 20% flat rate tax, they would be the 3 things I bring in. Legalise drugs, keep Trident but don't update it, and 20% flat rate tax. Can anybody seriously argue that all these reforms are bad, all these reforms would ruin society, all these reforms are unnecessary? Of course they're not. They are what this country needs. So give me, as Prime Minister for the day, those are the 3 things I would legalise. Now, what are the things that I would like to bring in? I would like to bring in, if I was a PM and I could order everything and didn't have to worry about parliamentary majorities and that kind of thing, I would like to end the tax discrimination for faith schools. Faith schools are indoctrinating young people in one way. Now, whether you believe in any gods or not, there's so many gods around there, and whether you believe in them and whose God is better than their God and all that kind of thing. The fact is tax relief for faith schools that reinforces a wicked system that is indoctrinating kids. Let kids think for themselves. learn all about religions, and the more they hear about them, the less likely they are actually to go on and even think that there's any God up there. There isn't. So you can argue about that and whether anybody's listening and what effects one God can have, and the civil service up in heaven, how they're coping, and the planet's been going for billions of years. What was God doing all that time? So we got all of that. But faith schools should not be allowed taxed to encourage the discrimination against other faiths and other kids. And luckily, remember, 25% of the world don't believe any of this stuff anyway. So we got a sound base. And in the end, by education, I believe, not by force, by education, we could actually teach people there's no God up there. There's no religion up there worth following, worth dying for, which millions and millions have done. All the troubles in the world are down to religion, most of them anyway. So what we could do is faith schools, that's one way you could go and tackle it. Another thing I'd like to bring in, this would be very hard to actually, well, to enforce it is impossible, because one parliament can't enforce what another parliament does. But I would like to ban another Scottish referendum, at least for a generation. Now the vote was 45 to 55. 55 said no to Scottish independence, 45% said yes. That was a clear vote last September in 2014. And even now, the Scot Nats are going on. They want another try. And of course, on this policy, they go on and on and on. Their polls would say the public wants it, on they would go. It would be never ending. So I would say at least for another 25 years, no referendum. Whatever happens, leaving the EU, they said that's a huge point that apparently Scotland doesn't want to leave the EU. I want to leave the EU, and let's hope the referendum, when it comes, hopefully next year we will be out. But whatever happens, if we leave the EU, that doesn't matter. You're part of the United Kingdom. So no referendum. They've had their chance. They took it. Said it was a lifetime decision. Remember Nicola Sturgeon and Alex Salmond. This is the vital vote of our lifetimes. Well, they lost, and they lost clearly. So no Scottish referendum, I would say. So I'd have two things. I'd end the tax relief for faith schools. The referendum vote, I certainly. And the third thing, let's ask you this question here. If you want to judge what a person is like in one simple sort of phrase, one single sentence, do they call it field sports or blood sports? Quite simple. If they call it field sports, they're generally decent people. They like the countryside, the way of life, the tradition of our country. Blood sports is that they're probably vegetarians. Anybody's a vegetarian, you suspect them for a start. So I would like to legalise field sports. Now, obviously, you'd like to get it through Parliament, a free vote in Parliament. Whether it could get through is a difficult problem. But if I had the absolute control, I'd legalise field sports, or hunting, hare coursing, that kind of thing. And the reason is quite simple. It's for the animals themselves. Imagine if hares and foxes were able to vote. They would say, well, I'm chased once or twice a year, probably get away with it, but if I don't, well, that's too bad. But imagine if we don't have hunting, what happens then? Hares and foxes are snared, they're trapped, they're poisoned, they're shot. Hare shoots are revolting. The poor, poor animals, they're shot, and many of them, they crawl away in the undergrowth. They can take days to die from gangrene and that kind of thing. All the other alternatives to hunting are absolutely revolting for the animals. At least it is, when they are caught, it is the end. Very few injured hares and foxes escape from the hunts. So you've got to, if you legalise hunting, you've got a relatively humane way of controlling animals that the farmers otherwise would get rid of. You go where there's no hunting in parts of Europe, and that's when there are no hares, there are no foxes. Why are farmers going to keep them alive? So for the future of the species, the foxes and hares, hunting is absolutely vital, apart from the fact that it's a way of life. You may laugh at people dressing up in hunting pink and all that sort of thing, and going on horses and blowing their horns. That's up to them. They're not harming anybody, and they're certainly helping conserve, in the end, far more foxes. Millions of foxes are alive, and hares are alive now because they're in hunting land. That's where you choose to live. If you were a fox and a hare, you say, well, I live in a hunting land, I've got a chance here. I have no chance of farmers coming out and shooting me and poisoning me and trapping me and snaring me. So for the animal's sake and for the freedom's sake, end the ban on hunting, bring that back. I'd like it to be through Parliament, but I'm Prime Minister, I can dictate. So my three dictates that I would have: a tax on faith schools. I would also have the Scottish referendum, not again for 25 years, that's out, and I'd bring back hunting. what a fantastic Prime Minister I would make. And you have to think, Leslie, great question you asked there, and you were thinking that I should be the next Prime Minister. I think I've got one vote already. I control the booby, so that's another one. So I got 2 votes. Cameron had better watch out. And as for Jeremy Corbyn, God, what chance would he have if he was up against me in a general election? So that's that. So you've had the Big Macs, the politics show, and how I sort of changed things at Westminster. And I want to thank you for watching. Make sure you all subscribe to my YouTube channel and keep sending in your questions on Twitter at Real McCririck and Facebook at Real McCririck / Real McCririck by adding hashtag AskBigMac. If I don't answer your question this week, it might be next week. And make them as good as Leslie's question was, because that makes me feel quite important, and really people are listening. They do want me in Downing Street. I don't think I'd like to go to the Chancellor's residence in Downing Street. That wouldn't be quite me. I'm not too good on the financial things. Looking at my own finances, it shows that it wouldn't be a great success for the countries. But as Prime Minister, that would be me. And wouldn't the booby, wouldn't she be wonderful as the First Lady?